and welcome back to another episode of Proverbial Perspectives. I'm Yazhini.
And I am Simran. We are so glad you are joining us today.
So, Simran, recently we had an episode where we had a great discussion about student well being, didn't we?
We really did. We covered everything from juggling assignments to squeezing in some me time.
And the feedback from that episode was actually amazing. Some of the students reached out to say how much they resonated with the challenges we talked about.
Exactly. And that got us thinking there's a deeper layer to student well being, which is mental health.
Right. And as the saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So today we thought we'll dive deeper into mental health itself.
Yes, because health is wealth, and mental health is just as important as physical health, if not more.
Absolutely. And in the hustle and bustle of everyday uni life, it's so easy to overlook our own mental health.
I can totally relate. There have been times when I have been so caught up with deadlines that I forgot to take care of myself.
Absolutely. It's like we're trying to pour from an empty cup, and you know why they say you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, exactly. Self care isn't selfish, it's necessary.
And sometimes it's about reaching out. A problem shared is a problem halved. Talking to someone can make so much of a difference.
Yeah, but I know that can be tough. There's still a lot of stigma around mental health.
That is true, but I think that we can start to see a shift. More people are opening up and they're being more encouraged to talk about their problems, which is such an amazing thing.
Definitely. And it's important to remember that no man is an island. We are not meant to go through life alone.
Yeah. Sometimes just voicing our thoughts can make them seem less overwhelming. And even when things seem dark, remember the darkest hour is just before the dawn.
Yes, there's always hope. And every cloud has a silver lining. Sometimes our challenges lead to growth we didn't even expect.
That is so true. And it's okay not to be okay all the time. This too shall pass. So if you're listening and feeling overwhelmed, know that you're not alone and there are resources available for you.
Speaking of resources, we have a special guest joining us today.
Yup, we sat down with our university's counselor who shared some amazing insights on mental health and the supports available here at uni.
Yeah, trust me, you don't want to miss this.
So without further ado, let's dive into that chat. Good morning, Greg. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy to have you. Just to start off with, can you explain your role as the university's counselor and what a typical day looks like for you and in supporting students and their mental health?
Yeah, thanks, Yazhini. Really good to be able to talk with you today. So I'm one of the counsellors at the Student Counselling Service here. We have quite a few of us. I'm a psychologist. The counsellors are psychologists or social workers. And my role is in really providing counselling, as you guess by the name. And most of the work I do is appointment-based. Students will sort of ring up and send in a form, usually to make an appointment to come in, and then we'll come in and I'll have a session with them. We have some counsellors sort of work more as I do, just by appointments, and then there are others who respond to students. We call them triage workers, so that when someone makes an initial inquiry, they'll usually sort of ring them back within 24 hours just to check how they're going and how things are, and if they need any urgent sort of care, or if they can be booked in for an appointment. And then my day spent with appointments, sort of seeing students, plus occasional meetings and other bits and pieces, but that's the main focus of it. And then usually we'll see students for a few sessions, up to about 6 per student per year, is a guideline. But if someone had a really serious problem that needed more help, then we'd sort of help them to find proper, more ongoing help in the community. So usually for a lot of people coming in, 1 or 2 sessions really makes a big difference. They can be surprised by it. But, for some students, we're able to see them, at different times through the course of a degree. So, but yeah, the typical day is doing the counselling meeting with people.
All right, thank you. That's really nice. Because you see so many students every day, I just wanted to know, can you describe the most common mental health challenges that the university students face today?
Yeah, anxiety is a really big one. People get really anxious. I think that's really common for students and in society at large. managing stress, sort of feeling overloaded sometimes or overwhelmed. And we deal with quite a range with depression. Sometimes people have an episode of depression, then it's really good to get some help to sort of get through that, to be able to get back on track with it. And then more broadly, things like loneliness. I mean, I don't know if you call it a mental health problem, but can feed in to all of those things. Sometimes trauma, if someone's had some trauma happen to them, we help them to sort of get over that and find a way forward. And then other things like relationship problems and family issues people might want to talk about as well. It's not really a mental health issue, but also some students come in who might have neurodivergence, where they're sort of different sort of patterns of things like ADHD, to help them sort of manage that. Yeah, so that's sort of the range of things.
That's actually really diverse. I think just for a layman listening, they would think that it's probably just if you're feeling overwhelmed with studies, but it's really nice to know that you can come here for a varied presentation of problems.
And of course it can just be, excuse me, for study management. I mean, you wouldn't call that so much a mental health issue, but students who are struggling with procrastinating or perfectionism or trouble focusing, we help with all of that sort of stuff too.
All right, that's really nice. Yeah. And I'm aware that you get a lot of referrals from the GP clinic, is right? A block away. So, so apart from being referred from the uni's health practice, where else do referrals usually come in from?
Most of the students, we get referrals, the lecturers or course coordinators, tutors will recommend for a student to get some help with things. A lot of the referrals are sort of self-referred. I mean, the students either in orientation or seeing advertising around uni sort of found out we exist, or maybe have a friend. We get quite a few people who come in and say, look, a friend had come in and found it helpful. So a lot of them are self-referred because they've just seen that there's a service available.
Yeah.
And, just to say as well, the service is free, of course, it's professional, we're all professionals, and it's confidential. I mean, nothing goes back to the rest of the uni or anyone. That helps. So a lot of self-referrals, but also sometimes from faculty or from some of the other services around uni.
Yeah, all right. And how would you say that the transition to uni life, how does that impact students in terms of their mental health, especially for those who are living far away from home?
Yeah, I think it can be super exciting, I think, coming to uni and coming to a new country, if people are coming to a new country. But of course it can also be really stressful, and I think people can find themselves sort of cut off from their usual supports, their family, their social networks, and that sort of can be quite tough. And so if there's a sense of isolation or loneliness, feeling a bit overwhelmed about how to cope with a new culture, a new system, sometimes they find wherever they've been studying before, the systems here are very different. So there can be a lot of stresses with all of that sort of stuff, and they can really mount up. And I think if anyone's in that situation, anything just to reach out and make contact for international students with us or with the international student support, often they'll have some contact, can really help if you feel you can make a few connections with people, both other students, but also with some of the support services. That really helps.
And what can actually be done about this? What advice would you give to these students?
Well, I think just it helps. Often people get surprised how much it helps just to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
If you've found that you've sort of cut off, and sometimes students will still be getting support from home. They'll ring or go online and talk about it, but some students don't want to worry their parents too much, that sort of thing. So just being able to talk about it can help, and then that helps to manage it, to maybe look at some stress management strategies, to look at some steps to try to make some other connections here, to find a way of connecting with other people. And often being aware that there's that sense that, initially it can feel a bit overwhelming, but once you start moving forward and feel more connections with the systems, the university, and with other people here, then that really, really helps.
Yeah. Seems like isolation is a very common theme in terms of international students, but also otherwise, especially since the pandemic. So how would you say that the pandemic affected students in terms of how they are able to cope with their mental health? And do you feel like there are some lasting effects?
Yeah, I think the pandemic, had a impact, because I think for a lot of students, like, it's a time coming to uni when often people are really looking forward to being able to meet other students and have a social life at uni, and hopefully that happens. But with the pandemic, it was like a lot of that just closed down, and then people are isolated, students are isolated, working from home on a computer terminal. And I think that had a big impact, because it sort of magnifies things. Like, if people are feeling anxious or a bit depressed and having anxious, depressed thoughts, then if you're sort of sitting at home by yourself feeling isolated, all of that stuff can magnify. Whereas if you are connecting more with other people and coming into lectures or coming into tutes, whatever else, then that helps it. And I think for a lot of students, it sort of threw out of whack that sort of process of just sort of, initially people will feel a bit nervous maybe, coming in and meeting other people, but usually get through that, and it sort of, made that much harder. And then for some students, it's been harder to get back on track with that again afterwards, to sort of change. And, there's more sort of stuff that's online and a bit less immediate contact.
Yeah.
So I think that's had a lingering
teaching
effect.
in general has changed since pandemic. And that ties in with this.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd certainly encourage everyone as much as they can to come in, where there's a choice of face-to-face or online. If you can come in face-to-face, I think just that, I'm a sort of strong believer that we're all social animals, really, and we often think of things as, we're talking often about mental stuff and intellectual learning at uni, but we also need to be around other people. So I think that makes a difference.
I think human touch in general just makes a difference and can be very uplifting in ways that we don't even realize.
There's some very nice, just as a point of interest, there's some very nice research over the last couple of decades that look at how people sort of feel safe and the mechanism that we have when we feel under threat. So often, like, if you're feeling threatened, a fight-flight response gets kicked off, which is good for short bursts, if we see a tiger in the jungle sort of thing, or a truck coming down at us as we're crossing the road, so you can run faster and so on. That gets kicked off, but it's good for short bursts, not for long term. And these days, often people stay a bit stuck in it, like at work or in study. And in an extreme, we can have a freeze, where people sort of freeze up or sort of shut down if there's sort of no escape from a situation, which again is okay in evolution, like if you can't escape the predator. But for mammals, they've found out now that this whole thing that the vagus nerve is called, that we help to down-regulate our stress response, to use the jargon, to help each other feel safe. Just with social contact, we're really wired physically for things like eye contact, smiling, warm voice tone. It helps to sort of feel safer. And there's a very nice quote, Stephen Porges is the person who's developed this, and other people like Gabriel Mattei have followed it, but a nice quote saying that safety is not the absence of threat, it's the presence of connection. And I think it's just a really nice one to sort of think, because of course, you're unsafe if you're under threat, but having connections, as human and mammals really, but humans particularly, it helps to have that. So anything that can help to step into connecting a little bit more, maybe connecting with uni clubs, going to classes.
I think it also just increases confidence in general, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To deal and tackle with what you face every single day.
Yes. Yeah. I think so.
I think in the age of like Zoom tutorials and everything, of course it has its benefits, but you feel extremely isolated, and you also have this feeling that it's only you going through this. So just stepping into a classroom it'll just make you so much more aware.
I agree 100%.
And also in that topic, how would you say that academic pressures contribute to these issues as well?
Well, I think there is pressure academically, and I think for some international students it can be sort of bigger. They've come all the way here, and they're big fees and all of that sort of stuff. So academic pressures are part of feeling pressure. Hopefully, if people have been able to get into uni, then they're able to sort of manage the study load. So it can help just to reassure yourself in a way, like some positive sort of self-talk, like if people get really worried about not doing well, if people can sort of stay on it and try to set up a schedule and a routine of study, hopefully they'll find a way through with that, and they can get help with some of that sort of stuff either here or the Maths Learning Centre or the English Language Centre or things like that to get some help with that. But yeah, there are pressures, and that can lead to stress, and then it's good to have some stress management sort of strategies in place to be able to help to manage that.
You just mentioned the different avenues of help that students can get.
Yeah.
So can we just dive a little bit more deeper into that? What services does the uni provide to support students struggling with mental health issues?
Yeah, so I think it's good that there are a few, like the counselling centre here. We're at ground floor of the Horace Lamb building, so we sort of particularly deal with that. You've already mentioned there are doctors on campus, the medical service, so it can be good to book a time with one of the doctors. So that can be a really good thing to get a doctor's opinion on that. There's the service student care. They're not as focused on mental health as we are, but a very good service for helping with all sorts of practical issues, advocacy, if someone was having trouble with a supervisor, if they're a postgrad student, or with agencies, like government agencies, something like that. They can really help a lot with that sort of stuff, and then if those pressures are managed, then that really helps. The International Student Support Service is really good for international students and very helpful, so really good to be able to talk to. They're the main ones, and also in the background, like for practical help about things, Ask Adelaide is very helpful. You might not talk so much about all the mental health stuff, but if there are issues people have, it's really easy to sort of reach out to them. And you mentioned the wellbeing service. I mean, it's nice that they work to promote wellbeing in the uni. I mean, probably someone less to approach if you're struggling with things. We might be more a port of call, but there are a few of those services there.
That's really lovely.
Yeah.
Well, it's really nice to know that all these services are out there, and times are changing where people are becoming more accepting and more open to talking about some of the issues they're having. There are still a lot of people struggling with coming forth to seeking help. So what would you say to encourage these students?
Well, I would just encourage them just to take a step if they can to do that. I think, loads and loads of people, seek help these days. That people used to worry about it in the past, but it's very sort of normal for people to reach out and get some sort of help with a mental issue at some point or another along the track. So, it's a normal, almost usual thing for someone to do at some point. Also, like if they come in somewhere like here, like it is free and professional and confidential, so they can speak about it and come in and check us out, I guess, to see if we're warm and friendly, which I like to think we are.
Right.
And so I think, just looking to reach out if someone wants to, in other contexts, they might call a helpline or something as a first thing. And also just to take a small step. Sometimes people feel they can't really talk to friends, and you might think, okay, which friend, if I want to talk a little bit about something I'm struggling with, might be the most supportive. I mean, if someone, had some people there around, or who can I just begin to, broach this with in a small way. But I think just taking a chance to reach out and ask for some help is a really good thing to do.
Sometimes it's also easier to talk to someone who is not such
Yes.
a key role in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a nice thing about coming somewhere like this. That we're separate to the rest of that. We're independent.
All right. And we've discussed a few topics about how the pandemic has effects on mental health and academic pressures and living away from home. Another key component in our everyday life now is social media. So how do you think social media and the digital age affect students, and do you notice any trends related to the social isolation despite online connectivity?
Well, my sense is that, I'm a bit older, so I use social media a bit less than a lot of other people these days. But I do worry about it because I think, it has a place, And, you know, it can be great that people can connect at long distances and, you know, at all sorts of different times. But I think, you know, we really do need to be around people physically present, you know, at times. I think we really are, you know, social animals I mentioned before, and as humans we sort of need that. You know, I think mind and body aren't really separate, they're all sort of interlinked, and that sense of presence of being around people, you know, it feels soothing in a way, feels sort of comforting, feels connecting. So I think if people are doing too much social media and not enough actual face-to-face connection, then it's very easy to feel isolated with that. Also, I think when people have mental health issues, they're likely to find some of their thoughts spinning, anxious thoughts, oh my God, what about this, what about that, or depressive thoughts, and it's very easy for those sort of mental loops to happen more and more and more if you're isolated. Also, social media, sometimes people can end up with crazy websites if they're looking at some of that, or end up, you know, comparing themselves. Some social media sites are like advertising, you know, for someone in all their happy moments, and sometimes it's easy if you're not around people to think, oh, their lives are all so wonderful, mine's so terrible, and that's not really the case. So it does worry me a bit that I think people can, if they have too much of that that's not sort of balanced by actual contact, actual presence with other people, then that can exacerbate a lot of mental health issues, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can mess with what they think reality is.
Yes,
Yeah. And what coping strategies can students use to manage stress and anxiety in general?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of practical things that people can do. So we've already mentioned a lot about trying to have some contact with people, and just factoring that in. Sometimes I'll see students here who say, oh, I'm too busy, you know, I've got exams coming up, I can't. But at least catching up with people for coffee, or to share a meal, or to go for a walk together, you know, something like that, where you're catching up with people regularly, as well as maybe on a Friday or Saturday night, maybe going out if that's what suits you, but having some way of doing that. Exercise is really helpful for managing mental health, and everyone knows exercise is good for you, but when people do get stressed, it does kick off that fight-flight response, and then your body and brain has this sort of adrenaline, cortisol, these stress chemicals in your system, and then if it stays there, you know, you're more likely to get caught up in stress thoughts and feel burnt out. So we're actually geared to do some major physical activity, and so exercise, even just to walk for half an hour, ideally walking a bit fast so your heart rate goes up a bit, but any exercise, walking, gym, yoga, I love it. You love yoga, you know, swimming, kicking a ball around for football or whatever, anything like that can be good. And it also is good to know exercise, so it has really good mental health benefits, and it burns off the stress chemicals, and it releases all sorts of positive chemicals they've discovered in recent years, things linked with sort of feeling good, and also chemicals that help you learn better. A lot of studies recently have showed if you exercise, after you've exercised, sort of there's a follow-on from that later, that you learn better. It releases these things they talk about as like brain fertilizer and brain steroids and things like that. So it sort of is good to know. Also, if you're stressed, just being able to say, sometimes how you view stress has an impact as well.
Yeah.
So if you can say, okay, I'll channel this stress, I really want to do well in this study because I want to help people with my profession, or, you know, whatever it might be, that if you think, okay, I really channel this, a certain amount of stress can be focused in a good sort of way. They did a nice experiment one time where they showed people going in a really stressful situation, a little video showing stress was bad for them, and another group, a video showing stress was good for them. And the ones who saw that both videos were true but highly selective, the ones who saw stress was good for them performed better, but they also had, at the end of it, sort of less cortisol and more of this DHEA, it's called, this sort of brain fertilizer stuff. So if you can focus like that, it's good. Also, a couple of other tips, like it's important to look at the basics, try to get decent sleep routines if you can, just try to eat reasonably well, you know, keep hydrated. They're things everyone knows but are easy to forget. And the other thing that's important is to structure in breaks. I think when some students will see just want to study, and then if they're studying for a while, then they get a bit worn out, and then when they have a break, they feel guilty about having a break, and maybe just go online for social media or YouTube or something. But then if they're doing that and they're still just looking at a screen, it's not really like a break. It's not like really getting away from things and, you know, chatting with someone or going for a walk. So structuring breaks in study is really important, and recognizing that it gives your brain a recovery time. Because otherwise, if people are just sitting there feeling guilty about not studying, when they go back, they're tired before they start. So structuring in some time away from the study is really important.
Right. I was just going to ask you about your advice to students who are facing burnout, especially given that a lot of the students at uni are not just studying, they're balancing research or work and, of course, their personal commitments. So burnout is a really big obstacle that a lot of students are facing, but that's really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like you mentioned, we are social creatures. We crave company.
Yeah.
And in that sense, what role can peer support play in promoting mental wellness among students?
Yeah, I think peer support can really make a huge difference. I think, you know, as we've said, just being around other people who are supportive or friendly, you know, and warm makes a real difference. So that helps in itself. You know, being able to support each other really makes, you know, a big difference, because then people feel like you're in this together and you're supporting each other. That helps to feel calm and more confident, happier generally. I think, you know, not being afraid just to ask someone how they're going, you know, as a general thing, you know, how are you going today? I mean, we'll sort of ask that and people say fine, you know, but to sort of, you know, actually be interested. And if you see someone who looks like they're having a bit of a hard time, just to check in, you know, are you okay? Like they have that, are you okay, David? Just saying, how are you going? You okay? Or if you've noticed they seem a bit flat or a bit down or a bit anxious, just saying, you know, asking about that, you know, just being able to be listen and, you know, to help with that. And I think sometimes if people are going through a hard time, it's important as well not to isolate if they are. And sometimes we'll see students who say, well, I don't want to go out because I'm not really going well, and I don't want to tell everyone my problems, but you know, I don't want to pretend I'm happy. But it's still good to be around people even if you're not talking about it. You can say, oh, I've been going through, you know, a bit of stress lately, but tonight I want to forget about it and just have fun or watch a movie or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So, you know, you know, the students can help each other a lot, you know, just by being around and being warm and caring, and also by, you know, just doing simple, enjoyable activities together.
Yeah. And in this fast-changing world, what do you see the future of mental health? And also in this fast-changing world, what do you see the future of mental health support at this university to be like?
Well, you know, I'd hope you know, for the counselling services to still be available and for them to be accessible, you know, for people so that students can get in easily, to be able to check in and to be able to talk about sort of stuff here. I think there's a role with it, you mentioned already, the wellbeing team, like promoting sort of wellbeing services. I would hope, you know, that there are trends to sort of less and less face-to-face contact, but, you know, to be able to have a lot of things happening at uni where people are actually coming in and sort of connecting, because I think that helps. But the main mental health things, you know, I think, it would be services, you know, the services we have to really be able to maintain and strengthen them in an ongoing way.
And to wrap up, what would you say is your main message to all the students listening? What would you like to tell them?
Main message.
That's a loaded question.
Well, I think the main message is that I think, a couple of main messages. One is, if you feel like you're having some stresses, you know, don't be afraid to reach out. You know, heaps of people reach out. It's very normal to do that, to be reaching out to get some help now. And also to be aware that it's easy to get lost in your own thought loop sometimes if people are stressed about things. Usually, you know, if you reach out, you can then get a few things in place. Talking about it helps to get a perspective on it, to be able to put some steps in place, to be able to move forward. so reaching out in that sort of way, and then keeping a few of the basics going, sort of remembering to take breaks in the study, to look after yourself, to do some exercise or yoga or meditation or a practice like that that's sort of helpful for you, and keep connected with other people. The worst thing is, I think, is sometimes people can get in spirals. They're worried about things, and then they get caught up in distracting themselves, and then they're isolating. So anything that keeps connected, I think, keep connected with your tutors on the one hand for the academic stuff, but also with any of these services in the university, because once you connect in, we really want to help. We like it, actually. I think all of us here sort of like the work. We like helping students. It's satisfying, it's rewarding, and so try to keep connected in with the whole process, on all those levels.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
Wasn't that such an insightful conversation?
Absolutely. I feel we just scratched the surface on so many important topics.
Same here. And I feel like we've uncovered a few tools that can help us in taking care of our mental health.
Yeah. Today's discussion reminded me that every little bit counts. Even small steps can lead to big changes over time.
That's so true. It's important to remember that you're not alone. There are so many people here to support you.
Exactly. Sometimes just reaching out can make a world of difference.
And for anyone listening who might be going through a tough time, just remember, after the rain comes the rainbow, and there are brighter days ahead.
Well said. And don't forget, it's okay to not be okay. Acknowledging how you feel is the first step towards healing.
Before we wrap up, I really just want to thank Greg again for sharing all that wisdom.
Yes, and a big thank you to all the counselors out there making a difference.
And to our listeners, we hope that today's episode gave you some food for thought.
If you found this helpful, feel free to share it with your friends. Sharing is caring after all.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop us a message or comment about how you're feeling and taking care of your mental health.
Yeah, remember, we are all in this together. Many hands make light work, and supporting each other makes the journey easier.
Couldn't agree more. And signing off is Yazhini and
Simran.
Bye!